Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. You can find Civic Center TV on Comcast, Channel 15, and AT&T Channel 99, where you'll also find us in Southfield on City Cable 15 of Southfield and in Birmingham and the Bloomfield Hills area, Birmingham area municipal access. Find us as well on Channel 10 in Waterford on the Media Network of Waterford and on Channel 10 in Lake Orion and Orion Township on Orion Neighborhood Television. Join us as well on the web on civiccentertv.com/watch-live or click on our Watch Live link at civiccentertv.com. Or you can also find us on our Facebook pages. There's a Facebook link at the top of the page. That'll take you to facebook.com/CivicCenterTV15. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LakesFM. Find us also on the web as well as on your smartphone and on your smart TV on My Michigan TV, otherwise known as MyMy. Visit mymytv.com to learn more information about everything you can find on MyMy, including the Megacast, Larry and Maddie Live, Steve Leto on Leto Live, and more imported programming all about the state of Michigan, and more information on how you can download both their free smart TV and smartphone apps so you can take My TV home with you as well as on the road. Join us, of course, on the radio, as I mentioned, our flagship station, 89.3 Lakes FM in the greater West Bloomfield area, and in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Troy areas on 88.1, the BIFA service of the Bloomfield Hills School District. Learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape, and find all of our shows and each individual interview on demand by visiting CivicCenterTV.com and clicking on our Megacast link. There we have links to every single one of our partnering stations, so you can learn more information about everything else that they do on top of joining us for the Megacast broadcasts live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon, as well as throughout the afternoons, evenings, and weekends for replays. Also, while you're on our website at CivicCenterTV.com, head over to our coronavirus link to keep up to date on everything that you need to know about COVID-19 from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Departments of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division. We have links to their COVID-19 specific web pages, so you don't have to scour their entire website and do a bunch of searching, a bunch of clicking and backspacing and whatever you need to find those specific web pages. We take you directly to their COVID-19 websites so you can have accurate information from experts on the front lines of this pandemic that give you information about the spread of COVID-19, variants of COVID-19, vaccinations, booster shots, precautionary tactics that you can employ in your daily life, and more. All of that at CivicCenterTV.com/coronavirus, as well as our top headlines making news all across the state of Michigan, including right here in Oakland County each and every day. We scour news outlets from across the great state of Michigan in order to keep you informed on things happening north, south, east, and west in the Great Lakes state. Our top headline today in Oakland County: James and Jennifer Crumbly were ordered to stand trial after a breakdown in court. This is from the Detroit Free Press. Not long after James and Jennifer Crumbly broke down crying in court after hearing an excerpt from their son's journal, a judge ordered the distraught couple to stand trial for their alleged roles in the deadly Oxford High School shooting, concluding that they could have stopped the rampage that was carried out by their quote-unquote troubled son. Quote, "The court finds that the deaths of the four victims could have been avoided if James and Jennifer Crumbly exercised ordinary care and diligence in the care of their son," and close quote, said 52nd District Court Judge Julie Nicholson in reaching her decision. Judge Nicholson continued on saying, quote, "There was extensive testimony that their son was certainly a troubled young man and that the parents had knowledge of that situation, but they purchased a gun which he believed was his and that he was free to use," and closed quote. The judge's decision came not long after the entries from the alleged shooter's journal were read in court, including this one that brought the couple to tears. Quote, "I'm sorry for this, Mom and Dad. I'm not trying to hurt you by doing this. I have to do this. I hope my parents can forgive me for what I do," and closed quote. Prosecutors say he wrote those words before he allegedly carried out the November 30th shooting that killed 4 classmates and injured 7 others, including 1 teacher. In the journal, the 15-year-old also allegedly blamed his parents for what he was about to do, saying, quote, "I will cause the biggest school shooting in Michigan's history. I will kill everyone. I effing see," and close quote. Ethan allegedly wrote The shooter continued on by saying, quote, "I have fully mentally lost it after years of fighting my dark side. My parents won't listen to me about help for a therapist," end closed quote. He also allegedly wrote, quote, "The first victim has to be a pretty girl with a future so she can suffer like me," end closed quote. Perhaps most chilling, said Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald, was this excerpt, which said, quote, "I have zero help with my mental problems, and it's causing me to shoot the school. My parents won't listen to me," end closed quote. The journal entry was among many pieces of evidence that were entered into a 2-day preliminary exam in which the prosecution successfully convinced the judge to order the Crumbleys to stand trial on involuntary manslaughter charges. On cross-examination, defense attorney Shannon Smith argued there is no evidence in the journal or anywhere else that the shooter told his parents that he planned to carry out a mass shooting, nor is there any evidence that the parents knew he would do this. Quote, "The element that they can never prove is that Jennifer and James Crumbly knew that their son was going to commit the school shooting," end close quote, said their attorney Smith. Smith continued, quote, "The prosecution knows this, which is why they stretched hard to make these people look like the worst parents in the world," end close quote. Also found from testimony was that the parents weren't exactly too friendly. One of the investigators said the meeting with the Crumbleys was different than other meetings he has had with parents and their kids, saying, quote, "They weren't friendly or showing care to their son," said Hopkins, a school official. Quote, "They didn't greet him, they didn't hug him," end closed quote. Hopkins said he expressed to the parents that he was concerned about their son's well-being and suicidal ideations, giving them a list of mental health resources and saying, quote, "He needs someone to talk to for mental health support. I said as soon as possible, today, if possible," end closed quote. But Jennifer Crumbly said that day was not an option because she had to return to work. He doesn't recall the dad saying anything and noted, quote, "I have never had parents arrive at the school and not take their student home," end closed quote. Hopkins said he met with the 15-year-old defendant during his freshman year, but that it was a brief encounter over Zoom and involved making his schedule. He said that the teen had no history of disciplinary problems at school and that there were no records of him being bullied. On one occasion, a Spanish teacher contacted him about the alleged shooter and said that the student appeared sad. Hopkins said that he checked on the teen, and after waiting outside a classroom for him, he said that he went up to the teen and said, quote, "Hey, I hear you've been having a rough time. I'm here to if you need to talk," end closed quote. Quote, "He said, okay," said Hopkins, quote, end close quote, but Hopkins never heard from him. Thursday's hearing also included testimony from a gun shop owner testifying that James Crumbly came into her shop on November 26th with a minor and purchased a 9mm handgun, telling her, quote, "I've had my eye on it for a few days," end closed quote. Police say the gun was used in the school shooting, though the defense argued on cross-examination that it's not illegal for a minor to temporarily possess a handgun under certain circumstances, like target shooting with a parent. Well, that's not quite it there, defense attorney. That's not quite that temporary possession under certain circumstances. Certain circumstances don't include being inside of a school. But what do I know? You're the attorney here. Continuing on in this article from the Detroit Free Press, the manager of a shooting range testified that on November 27th, 2 days before the school shooting, Ethan and his mom went target shooting together. Video was played in the court of the mom and son target shooting together, though the defense argued that there's nothing illegal about that. Oh, there you go. Now you're correct. Oakland County Sheriff Sergeant Matthew Peschke, who helped search the Crumbly's home on the day of the shooting, also testified on Thursday. He said police searched the teen's room and found shell casings from a gun in plain sight, a nearly empty bottle of whiskey, folding knives, feces from a small animal, and a Nazi coin, all of which were shown on screen in court. Prosecutors also sought to introduce as evidence a marijuana grow operation that police found in the Crumbly's basement, but the defense objected, arguing that information was irrelevant to the case. The judge sustained that objection. This full article from the Detroit Free Press, as well as supporting materials, on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Also making headlines all across the state of Michigan, the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission gave itself a 7% pay increase despite a $1.2 million budget shortfall. This is from the Detroit News. The Redistricting Commission voted on Thursday to give its 13 members a 7% pay increase an increase that members framed as a cost of living adjustment in line with inflation. The increase, approved 8-3 in the vote, boosts commissioners' pay from about $55,000 to about $59,000. The vote comes as their work begins to taper off, and the commission faces a $1.2 million shortfall through the remaining fiscal year, which ends on September 30th. The commission said its pay raise, estimated to total about $32,000 through the end of the fiscal year, will be covered by the more than $100,000 in savings realized with the departure of their general counsel, who submitted her resignation last month and whose last meeting was this week Thursday. Quote, by failing to increase the salaries, we're effectively reducing our salaries because of the inflation rate, said Chairwoman Rebecca Satella, a non-affiliated member of the commission. Commission member Doug Clark voted against the increase, citing the commission's main task, which is drawing new voting districts for the state House, state Senate, and federal Congress, was complete at that time. Quote, I don't believe that we should have a salary increase based on our workload diminishing at this time, end close quote, he said. Clark continued on, I don't think it's the prudent thing to do at this point, end close quote. Clark, a Republican, was joined in opposition to the pay increase by Commissioner Cynthia Orton, also a Republican, and Commissioner Richard Weiss, a non-affiliated member of the commission. Republican members Aaron Wagner and Rhonda Lang were not present for the vote. The 13-member commission is seeking a legal opinion on when the duties of the commission members expire and how their pay should be handled moving forward. While the commission's maps are complete, they are still completing final reports on their work and are facing 2 lawsuits challenging the maps. At any point in the next 10 years, the maps could face additional challenges in court, potentially leading to a court order for the commission to redraw those maps, at which point this commission would need to reconvene. The constitutional language that created the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission appears unclear about how long their pay should continue. It requires each commissioner's salary be at least 25% of the governor's salary, or approximately $39,825, and that their terms last through, quote, census cycle, end close quote. The language requires the legislature to fund the commission, quote, for each year the commission operates, end closed quote. Governor Whitmer did not include funding for the commission in her proposed budget, which begins on October 1st. The commission also is exploring ways to approach the GOP-led legislature for more money. The commission faces a $1.2 million shortfall based on their quote-unquote best guess of ongoing legal costs for the defense of its maps. Through January alone, the commission spent $477,000 on litigation and local counsel to defend the commission and the maps in court. Quote, we are in active conversation about how to best approach the legislature in requesting these funds, said Executive Director Sue Ann Hammersmith. The Senate would consider quote-unquote any legitimate expenses, said Matt Sweeney, a spokesman for Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, a Republican from Clark Lake. But, quote, but commissioners giving themselves pay raises at taxpayer expense isn't likely to fall into that category, end closed quote, he said. Republican Greg Van Workum, a Norton Shores Republican who chairs the Appropriations General Government Subcommittee, was critical of the commission as well, saying, quote, what job do you know where you vote for your own pay increase even when your work is done, end closed quote. Van Workum said in a Thursday statement that he made, quote, already running a deficit, the legislature and the taxpayers will have plenty of questions should they come asking for more funding, end closed quote. The commission has come under fire for the pay increases and roughly $50,000 expenditure for production of a quote-unquote lessons learned documentary on their work. On Thursday, the commission disclosed it spent roughly $48,000 on public opinion polling regarding the commission's work and name recognition among Michigan voters. The commission said the purpose of the polling was to inform the work of the current and future commissions. The polling released Thursday found 41% of respondents had heard, quote-unquote, something about the 2018 constitutional amendment changing Michigan's redistricting process, a figure that dropped nearly 12 percentage points from a baseline assessment in March of 2021. In the survey of 600 people, which is not exactly a great sample size for the entire population of Michigan voters, was conducted February 11th through the 14th by the Glengrove Group and had a margin of error of plus or minus 4 percentage points. The initial baseline survey was conducted March 27th through March 31st of 2021. Additionally, the survey found 35% of those contacted had heard of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, and 66% of Michigan voters said that the state should continue using an independent commission to redraw its political lines every 10 years. Quote, one of the things moving forward for any commission to realize is that they need to have realistic expectations about the difficulty of engaging the voters across the state, said pollster Richard Zuba. This article from the Detroit News and supporting materials linked in that article on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Lastly, making headlines in our schools, Michigan enrollment ticks up, but still is down since before the pandemic. This is from our friends at Bridge, Michigan. Enrollment in Michigan schools grew slightly this year, but Detroit districts continue to lose students. The addition of nearly 6,000 students, or 0.4%, may be a hopeful sign that parents are becoming more comfortable sending their kids to classrooms nearly 2 years after Michigan schools were first shuttered due to COVID-19, officials said. Quote, we're starting to see the public education is getting back to normal, said Cassandra Ulbrich, president of the State Board of Education. Ulbrich continued on, quote, having a consistent in-person education opportunity for kids to continue, is going to help us continue to see the numbers increase, end closed quote. But statewide enrollment is still down 3.7% since before the pandemic and 5% in Detroit districts, raising questions about where those students went and concerns about that declining student counts could hurt district finances. Quote, let's say you lost 10 students, a small number. That's $87,000 right there, said Bob McCann, executive director of the K-12 Alliance, an advocacy group, noting that Michigan schools receive an average of $8,700 per pupil last year. Quote, the loss of a small number of students can have a direct impact on the district's bottom line and the services that they are able to deliver, end close quote. Enrollment fell by 256 students, or half of 1 percentage point in the Detroit Public Schools Community District. That's an improvement over last year when enrollment fell by a much astounding 3.7% compared to that 0.5% for this year. Detroit is far from the only big city school district grappling with enrollment issues. There are fewer students on the rolls this year in New York, Memphis, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The same remains true in Michigan, where urban school districts have seen enrollment declines in line with the Detroit Public Schools community districts over the last 2 years. District officials did not immediately respond to a request for comment by the authors of this article at Bridge, Michigan. Overall, the latest data suggests that Michigan's statewide enrollment is beginning to stabilize. This fall, the state enrolled 1,443,456 students, an increase from last year in the fall when it was 1,437,612 students. In a sign that some parents remain concerned about in-person instruction, enrollment in fully online charter schools in Michigan has risen an astounding 63%, or 6,200 students, since fall of 2019. Driven by the increase in virtual enrollments, charter school enrollment statewide increased by 988 students, or a 0.6% increase. Statewide, the enrollment increase was driven by students of color and students from low-income families. Black enrollment rose 1.89% from fall of 2020, while Hispanic enrollment rose 3.16%. White enrollment fell by 0.7% since fall of 2020. Enrollment in all three categories has declined overall since the numbers recorded in fall of 2019. Among students from low-income families, enrollment rose 2% over the last year, though it is still declined by 2% overall since fall of 2019. Kindergarten enrollment rose sharply this year, increasing 7%, or just over 8,000 students from the prior year. That's a reversal from last year when enrollment declines were concentrated in kindergarten. At the same time, a marked decline in the cohort that started kindergarten during the 2020-2021 school year suggests that some parents opted to have their children repeat kindergarten. It is unclear why statewide enrollment has declined since the outset of the pandemic, while data points nationally suggest that homeschooling has increased during the COVID-19 crisis. Michigan has collected homeschool enrollment data, and the state does not publish private school enrollment data. Students may have left the state, though many other states are also seeing enrollment declines. And setting aside the pandemic, Michigan's declining population is likely also playing a role. Quote, I don't know, end close quote, why enrollment is declining, McCann said, but he added that more families may be comfortable sending their kids to school as the pandemic wears on. Quote, we certainly heard at the beginning of the school year from parents who weren't convinced it was safe to send their kids back, end close quote, he said, continuing on. quote, we may be in a little bit of a different position in 2022. Michigan counts students in October and February. The February counts for this year are not yet available. That full article from our friends at Bridge, Michigan on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We're going to take a quick break, a very quick break here. We're a little bit behind, and on the other side, we will begin our show today in the Oakland County Hour, speaking with Gerard Baltrusaitis, a career counselor and internship employment specialist at JVS and Kadima, about their upcoming Your Brand in 2022 webinar. That's coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about the show by visiting our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find links to all of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, and find all of our shows and interviews on demand. Joining us now is Gerard Baltrusaitis, back with us again, a career counselor and internship employment specialist at JVS and Kadima, joining us on the Megacast. Gerard, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Appreciate having you on. So JVS and Kadima continue to be hard at work providing career-based webinars and other meetings for the public to join in on to learn more about getting back into this job market. As people are returning back into work, they're more comfortable to get back into work. There certainly are plenty of job openings for them. You have one coming up Monday, March 7th. That is a week from this coming Monday. That'll be called Your Brand in 2022. This is also going to be a live Zoom webinar. Tell us about what this webinar will be focusing on and what it means to be focusing on your brand in 2022 as you approach the job market.
Thanks, Tyler. A lot of people in the job search process are very interested in and concerned about their resumes and spend a good deal of time and sometimes money tweaking their resumes, making sure it's just right, it communicates the correct information about them, etc. Well, a personal brand is a larger segment of that. Actually, your resume is a small part of your personal brand. And we find, especially in today's job market and workforce, that branding yourself, identifying your personal brand is critical and very important.
And so, Gerard, some people may be a little bit apprehensive as they go into the job market about so aggressively or so intently branding themselves, so to speak, as they're approaching the job market, as they're applying for jobs, certainly as they're interviewing for those positions. Is this kind of an outdated mode of thought to think, I can't be too confident, I can't be too me in this pursuit of this job? Is that outdated? Is that kind of being twisted a little bit and some elements of that confidence are encouraged? What's the status of that, and why branding yourself is actually very important in today's job market?
Great. Thanks for hitting on that. Yeah. Branding yourself not only benefits yourself, but the other individuals as well. By communicating a clear and concise message as far as who you are, what your skills, talents, abilities are, what your value proposition is, it makes it much easier for employers to identify you as a solution to their problems. As a result, again, it creates a better fit. So this is not so much a matter of you going out and creating billboards for yourself and trying to do all kinds of public relations or different things like that. It's you understanding who you are and making sure that you can effectively communicate that message for other people.
We're joined by Gerard Baltrusaitis. He is a career counselor and internship employment specialist at JVS and Kadima. Their March 7th, 11 a.m. live webinar on Zoom will be called Your Brand in 2022. And so as you're focusing on your brand in 2022 and as you're approaching the job market with that brand in mind, it brings up a difficult question. Before you can get to that point, you first got to figure out what your brand is. And for those that have, certainly those that are switching career paths, those that have not been in the job market for a very long time, or those that are just unsure about what exactly their brand is, what steps should they be taking in order to make that determination and then tailor their job search to that branding?
Geez, Tyler, great. Another very good question. Yeah, a lot of individuals have a difficult time in the job search process because for the most part, they're lacking what we call self-knowledge. They're not quite sure of what type of professional they are, what their skills, talents, and abilities are, and again, what that value proposition is, what type of organization they want to work for, what area they're more cut out for, and again, in understanding that, it's much easier for you to communicate effectively. So you need to do this whether you're looking at branding yourself or not. This should be one of your first steps in the job search process as far as understanding where you are and, again, in the case of a transition, where you'd like to be going. So as a result, you need to have all of that, those ducks aligned in a row before you go out and start putting together a resume, asking people for employment, et cetera. So that's what we highly recommend. People sit down. What differentiates you from other people? And if you're having a difficult time understanding that, one of the best situations you can have is to go to family members or friends and ask them, when they think of you, what do they think of? What characteristics, what values, what stands out? And those are some of the things to get you aligned as far as what direction you might be going for your job search. So you need to define yourself, define your objectives, and know what your skills, talents, and abilities are before you start the job search. Now, if you've done that homework ahead of time and have a clear, concise picture of, again, the type of position you're looking for, what type of organization, and what you bring to that organization, actually most of your personal branding is already accomplished. It's just a matter of you effectively taking that persona and moving it forward.
We're joined by Gerard Baltrusaitis from JVS and Kadima. He is a career counselor and internship employment specialist with those organizations there. Your Brand in 2022 live Zoom webinar will be held on Monday, March 7th at 11 a.m. That is 1 week from this coming Monday, 11 a.m., Your Brand in 2022. And so with there being such a flood of job openings still available, even months and months and months into most of the economy being fully reopened or mostly reopened, and now even more so with the decline in COVID-19 cases following the surge in Omicron variant cases, people may think, well, there's so many openings, there's so many opportunities for someone like me in this job market to get into. I don't really need to do too much to stand out. There's going to be an opportunity there, and I'm going to get a great job. Is that a flawed way to approach the job market? Do people still need to really put themselves in a position to stand out, even with there being so many opportunities in so many different career fields?
Yeah, Tyler, again, it's a situation I wouldn't necessarily call it flawed. Many individuals go that path, but what I want to do is reemphasize the fact that the better your brand is, the more concise and the better you communicate that brand, the better off it is for you. There are a lot of generic opportunities out there, and maybe they pay, let's say, $20 an hour. Well, if you can differentiate yourself from a lot of individuals in that career arena, that specific industry, and if you can differentiate yourself by being a little bit better, a little bit more knowledgeable, bringing a little bit more experience to the job, now instead of $20 an hour, you're commanding $24, maybe $26 or $27 an hour. So again, it's not a flawed approach, but keep in mind, again, the understanding you get what you pay for, so to speak, and that's what employers are looking at. Now, for example, if you go to a grocery store, there are several items on the shelves, and what we're familiar with is the fact that generic brands cost less expensive than maybe a Del Monte or a Heinz, something that is branded. So it's to your benefit to convey a better, more concise brand, because you want to convey that you have more value than the next person, and that will get you the job. And then in negotiating for a salary, it also puts you at a higher point. So again, it's better off all the way around for the employer as well as yourself if you understand what value you're bringing.
We're joined by Gerard Baltrusaitis, career counselor and internship employment specialist at JVS and Kadima. More information on their Your Brand in 2022 live Zoom webinar and other webinars and classes that they're providing for those in the job market and other areas of life on their website, jvshumanservices.org. And so, especially today, and especially since the onset of the pandemic nearly 2 years ago at this, 2 full years ago at this point, Gerard, the presence on the web has become even more important. And even in the job market, something like your LinkedIn page can be a critical part in you either getting a job or maybe an employer being slightly deterred from you getting that position versus another candidate. How important is a LinkedIn page as one of many social media that can be leveraged to help you get a job?
Fantastic. Yes, LinkedIn is critical, especially in the job search market. Now, again, I'm finding out that younger people, I'm not quite 20 myself, but the younger generation know how to dabble in different applications much more. So if you're not comfortable with that, you're my age, let's say, you don't have to have necessarily a Snapchat, an Instagram, a Twitter account, a TikTok. But you need at least a good, strong presence on LinkedIn. And again, that LinkedIn presence should be able to convey more succinctly who you are and differentiate yourself as a specialist. Again, specialists command a higher salary than generalists. So that's what you want to make sure you convey. For example, on my LinkedIn profile, you'll find my name, Gerard Baltrusaitis, but as far as my job description or title, I have career evangelist, not career consultant, career evangelist. And the reasoning for that is I want to differentiate myself from other career consultants. Hopefully that's communicating the fact that maybe I'm more knowledgeable as well as more passionate about careers than your standard career consultant. So branding yourself with that title is one thing. And then again, my tagline to that is preaching and teaching the new ways of new work. So again, that's strong. Now that may exclude me from certain positions. Certain individuals may be uncomfortable with that, but for individuals that are looking more specifically for what I bring to the table, I'm hitting them right in the eyes with that, and they're going to be very interested in me.
So much like people will modify their resumes or will modify their cover letters for certain jobs in certain markets or even certain positions with one company versus another, even if it's the same position with 2 different companies, should they be considering those same options in their social media, particularly their professional social media in LinkedIn as they're approaching the job market?
Tyler, I'm sorry, I'm not clear on the question. In looking at different organizations, should you alter your LinkedIn profile or your resume or how you approach a company? More specifically, what's the question?
Yeah, more specifically, their LinkedIn. Should they be considering making some changes if they're approaching a certain type of job in the industry that they're in versus something maybe more general in that industry? So, for example, if they're in media and they would like to be a television reporter, a multimedia journalist, versus someone that wants to specifically be a finance reporter. They have experience with both, but they specifically are looking at a job with their local TV station as a finance reporter. Would they be needing to, or would it be beneficial to them to then modify their LinkedIn more toward being focused on that, being that that's their goal?
Good question. From the standpoint that you shouldn't be altering your LinkedIn profile that often. Resumes, each resume should be customized for that specific job. You should adapt your skills and experience on your resume for each different job application. Now, the actual LinkedIn profile, it's not something to be played with necessarily that often. So come up with who you are, a good, strong representation of your skills and in the specific areas you want to be in. Now, it could include that finance. It could include different areas that you may have experience on. But it's the resume that's what's going to get you the interview, so to speak, or for them to look at you on your LinkedIn profile. My recommendation, other individuals may state differently, but my recommendation is customize and adapt your resume, but make sure you have a comprehensive picture on LinkedIn that doesn't sway from one job to another very often.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's just what I was looking to clear up for those that are looking at this, that are watching or listening to this and thinking, okay, well, I'm modifying my resume for each of these jobs, my cover letter for each of these jobs. If LinkedIn is so important, maybe I should be doing that too. And it's good to clear up that the suggestion is, no, keep your LinkedIn pretty uniform. If you're going to update it generally, but not tailoring it specifically to one job versus another. We're joined by Gerard Baltrusaitis, career counselor and internship employment specialist at JVS and Kadima. They're Your Brand in 2022 live Zoom webinar Monday, March 7th at 11 a.m. That's Monday, March 7th, 11 a.m. JVSHumanServices.org for more information. So for those that are interested, do they have to register for this event? Is it just simply the link to the Zoom is on your website? How can people get involved if they'd like to attend Your Brand in 2022?
Yes, we recommend you register ahead of time so that we're able to get that Zoom link out to you so that there's no snafus last minute. And again, the information can be found on our website. So it's very easy to go out and register. And we'll get the link to you, and then we'll be there ready to answer questions that you have on that day.
Gerard, any lasting advice at this time for those that are rebranding themselves as they approach the job market in 2022, or those that are approaching the job market just in a general sense as we continue through this year?
Yeah, for people not to be intimidated. This word personal branding is very intimidating, especially, again, for the older generation. From the standpoint, keep in mind, this is very simple. We've been branding for thousands of years. When you go back to, say, the Bible, they talk about Pharisees and tax collectors and so on. And tax collector is a brand. Okay, and brands we think of as Coke, McDonald's, Ford Motor Company. Those are company brands. They differentiate themselves and can determine you pay more for a Lexus than a Kia because of the brand states that it has greater value. Brands, it's something, again, we've done since high school or even earlier than that. If we think of individuals that were, the terms jocks or nerds or burnouts or whatever some terms that were used back then, you branded yourself accordingly to your friend circle. So again, don't be intimidated by this whole concept of branding. It's just a matter of you conveying clearly and concisely who you are for the value of the employer as well as yourself. Thanks again, Tyler.
Gerard, appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break here on the Megacast. Again, you can learn more information about that seminar by visiting their website at jvshumanservices.org. And again, the seminar itself, the live webinar on Zoom, Your Brand in 2022, March 7th. That's a Monday at 11 a.m. jvshumanservices.org for more information and to register. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we will go over to the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, and we'll speak with Michelle Bianco and Chuck Phillipson from their Foundation for Excellence. That's coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate. So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's a second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Joining us now, championing every child every day from the as is the slogan of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District's Foundation for Excellence, are their Executive Director, Michelle Bianco, and Vice Chairperson, Chuck Phillipson, with us now on the Megacast to talk about the organization. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you on. Let's start with you, Michelle. Just give us a basic overview of what is the Foundation for Excellence? How does it serve the students of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District?
Of course. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to share with your listeners what we're all about. And it's really pretty simple. The Foundation for Excellence is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We're a collaborative arm of the Walled Lake School District. And this school year, we are celebrating 30 years. We're marking 30 years of our commitment and dedication. And what that means is being the best resource possible for all of the students and educators, and providing funds to our students, our classrooms, fostering relationships and partnerships with our district, our community leaders and businesses to provide and increase resources for our students. And Chuck can chime in there as far as our Board of Trustees and his civic engagement and what that means to him and taking part in the foundation.
Yeah, sure, Chuck, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I've been in and around the Walled Lake School District for 29 years. My kids both graduated through the school district, and my son had such a good experience through school that he's now a teacher himself. So we've gotten everything that we wanted to when we came to the community and as parents. And I just got involved too with the foundation. Gosh, Michelle, the years fly by. I'm probably going on 15 years of being a board member and a chair for many of those years. But it's just a matter of us coming together. We've got school administrators, teachers, people such as myself from the private sector, in all walks of life, coming together to serve on the board and do what we can to help put funds in the hands of kids that otherwise aren't provided from the district budget.
So, Michelle, on that note, Chuck makes an interesting point. As he mentions the budget that allocates, of course, a certain number of funds per pupil to each school district in the state of Michigan every single year, or every single school year, and that varies year to year as that per pupil cost is re-estimated on an annual basis. That only covers so much. That doesn't necessarily mean that one district versus the other is going to be able to take all those funds that they get and provide not only the basic needs of each child's education in their school district, but also those critical extracurricular activities. So for the Foundation of Excellence, where does that stand in helping the Walled Lake Consolidated School District specifically provide those extra activities and those extra opportunities that may not otherwise be there, but are so critical to the education of children?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for asking. And that's what we're here for, to increase the number of resources in those innovative, creative learning opportunities. The foundation was born out of wanting to maintaining excellence in education when the really significant budget cuts occurred. So back in the day, and Chuck was part of the board then, technology, the foundation was very instrumental in bringing technology into the classroom in partnership with our school district with smart boards and overhead projectors. And we were in partnership with our district in providing that type of opportunity until our community approved a bond in 2013 to standardize technology across the district. And then fast forward, our foundation again was at the helm in helping our classrooms have collaborative learning spaces. And we received through our grant program, again, requests for collaborative seating arrangements, those items that were needed to foster greater collaboration and learning. And then with the passage of the 2019 bond, classroom collaborative learning and the needed furniture was standardized. So what I've outlined is that we've been really at the forefront for our educators to come to us through our grant program and request funds for what they want to put in place, but don't have the funds to handle that. And then lo and behold, the district, through the approval of our community, was able to standardize that. So, yep, we're able to partnership with our educators and providing that innovation and increasing the number of resources through our grant program.
And those resource needs change over time, depending on the circumstances, depending on the year, depending on what's happening in the school district at any point in time. And so, Chuck, particularly during the pandemic, where there were so many challenges that did arise, how did that change the conversation between the district administration and members of the board of the Foundation for Excellence, and the conversations that you were having collaboratively in planning some of these programs and planning some of these fundraising efforts to be able to bridge some of those gaps that were only going to be widening or changing or varying in some way because of the circumstances of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's, great point. I mean, we kind of, those first few meetings, we, just like most, you kind of circle the wagons and say, okay, what do let's protect what we have. Let's revisit and make sure our mission is strong. And we just did just that. But through Michelle's hard work and research, we're able to not only make a few changes more specifically with the types of grants we're going to make, but sort of redirect them a little bit too, so we can be the group that can handle that for all the nuances that were occurring. And it was really uplifting to see how strong we came out of that. And the community was very supportive as well. They might have had monies earmarked for some specific project, but we were able to reach out to them, and we got some pretty impressive donations that we were able to help out within the classroom. And Michelle, perhaps you can give a couple of specific examples of how that, what those items were.
Yes, most definitely. And yes, Chuck provides a tremendous and sincere thank you to our community and district and remaining in partnership with us. Student literacy is critical. And during that pandemic, books were flying off the shelf to get them into the hands of our students at home to keep them reading and learning. So through our grant program, we've been able to help replenish classroom literacy libraries. Social emotional learning is huge during this time. So again, through our grant program, we've been able to provide needed resources to our educators to address those social emotional learning needs of their classrooms and their students, and help our educators hone in on what they need to do to best help their students. So I point towards student literacy and social emotional learning being huge items that as a board we have addressed with our district.
And so, Michelle, expand on that point, if you will. You mentioned literacy, student literacy, as being one of those critical points that the school board, that the school administration, and that your board as well with the Foundation for Excellence have been focusing on of late. What are some of those efforts that have been put forth by the Foundation's work to help support student literacy, especially as we've seen a little bit of slide during the pandemic with all the changes in education that have happened and those different obstacles and roadblocks that have had to have been navigated by our students?
Well, thank you so much for asking about that. We are in the midst of our annual grant program, and in the next couple of weeks, we will be presenting those awards to our teachers. And I guess I'm ready to tip my hand that out of our grant funding for this year, we will be providing over $18,000 in grants to support literacy, to help put more books in the hands of students. And I'd like to also bring to the attention of your listeners that within our annual grant program, we have the Classroom Library Literacy Program. This is the second year that we have been going forward. It is really born out of our educator who retired in 2020, Lori Burke, wanting to remain committed to student literacy and providing a donation to help us get more books in the hands of the students, specifically of diverse authors and themes, so students can see themselves in the books that they are reading and to be engaged. So that is a recent addition to our grant program. We're very proud of that partnership to have these added funds to make a difference.
We're joined by Michelle Bianco, Executive Director of the Walled Lake Consolidated School District Foundation for Excellence, as well as their Vice Chairperson, Chuck Phillipson, on the Megacast. Learn more information by visiting the Foundation for Excellence's website at wlcsd.org/FFE. That is WLCSD for Walled Lake Consolidated School District.org/FFE. Learn more about the programs, learn more about how you can get involved with the 501c3 nonprofit organization as well. And so, Michelle, tell us about your 17th annual tuition expedition as well. There's a 50-50 scholarship raffle that is currently ongoing. How much are raffle tickets, and where do these resources go? How do they help our students in Walled Lake?
Yes, thank you so much for asking about our tuition expedition 50-50 scholarship raffle. It is a prime fundraiser for our foundation. Tickets are $35 each and can be purchased online at WLCStickets.com. The proceeds will go towards supporting our annual grant program. This year, our grant program in total will be awarding over $36,000, and it addresses, as I've already provided information with regard to student literacy, social emotional learning, special education, really every aspect of learning within our classrooms. So our tuition expedition, as you said, is our 17th annual. It's in partnership with our community and our district to purchase our tickets. And gosh, we would love to have everybody get on board with us. Great odds, as only 1,000 tickets will be sold. And it's really a chance to win big and provide tremendous support for our district.
You can learn more information by visiting their website at wlcsd.org/foundation. That's wlcsd.org/foundation or /FFE. Both of those will redirect you to the website, to the specific webpage on the Walled Lake Consolidated School District's website for the Foundation for Excellence. We're joined by Executive Director Michelle Bianco and Vice Chairperson Chuck Phillipson on the Megacast talking about the Foundation for Excellence. And so what are some other ways that people can get involved, Chuck, if they want to get involved with the Foundation for Excellence, whether they are current parents, former district parents, alumni, or even currently just living in the area?
Well, we're a very active board, and that's where we really love the support. Whether you're someone who's been involved in the past with organizations, we'd love to have you. Maybe you've got a little bit of time because now that your kids are out of grade school and you've been in the classroom helping, you can help a little bit more behind the scenes, but again, in a very important role. So if you are a retired administrator, if you're an educator, if you're still working, we'd love to have your participation as a board member. Alternatively, would certainly love to take on any type of donations that you have. Those donations get put to great use. We talk about the grant program. Those grants are, they're really started from inside the school, each classroom, and that maybe a teacher administrator sees something that's not in the budget, that they need something that they feel strongly that they can help the kids in the class, and they submit these grant requests. We review them as a board. The other thing we do is make sure they are consistent with what the school district itself is trying to accomplish, make sure that we have a parallel goal there, and then that's how those funds are then granted back into the classroom. So it is a coordinated effort with teachers, administrators, us on the from the private sector, parents. So we would really love the support in any way you can help us.
Well, Chuck, thank you very much. Michelle, thank you very much for joining us. Before we let you go, anything else that either of you would like to say about the Foundation for Excellence, its programs, or how people can get involved?
Yes, well, as Chuck was just identifying, what is really so great about the Foundation for Excellence is your involvement is really widespread. It touches every classroom, every grade level, 9 municipalities, 55 square miles in our Walled Lake Consolidated School District. So lending a helping hand to the Foundation for Excellence is really one way of having a widespread impact. We not only are very proud of our annual grant program, we have the Schumann Family Performing Arts Student Grant Program. We have a 5th grade camp scholarship program to help get kids to 5th grade camp at our Walled Lake Outdoor Center. We also join our district in our Teacher of the Year recognition. So we are really about supporting all areas of education. And if that speaks to you, of course, I would see why it would not, because we're all stakeholders in education because our students are our future leaders. So I really encourage you to reach out to myself, a board member. Check us out on our website. We're a friendly and great group of people to work with.
Michelle, Chuck, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
211, how can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. for help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Welcome to the Michigan Megacast on your radio homes for the show, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. You can also find us on TV throughout the state of Michigan as well as on the web. Visit civiccentertv.com/megacast to learn more information, as well as find all of our full episodes and each individual interview on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now is a lecturer at the University of Michigan, lecturing in Ukrainian and Slavic languages, and also is part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. Eugene Bondarenko joins us now on the Megacast. Eugene, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Appreciate having you on. So first, can you tell us about the work of the crisis response team that you're part of, the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Team of Michigan, and the role that it's playing in working with our leadership here in Michigan and in the U.S. to address the truly harrowing situation over in Ukraine with the invasion from Russia?
Yeah, so the Detroit area has a Ukrainian community that is about 50,000 strong, not to mention that in general, we have received a lot of support from people completely outside of our community, because I think that the situation is appalling, and, it's the biggest, I think it's the biggest crime on the international world stage since 1939. But to get to your question, the Ukrainian community here and this organization, which is essentially the work of the entire community coming together, we're engaged in advocacy, so trying to get the word out about what is going on. Once again, trying to stay ahead of that Kremlin propaganda narrative. We also organize within the community to help with some humanitarian aid, such as medical supplies and things of that nature. And unfortunately, we at this point are having to seriously discuss mass numbers of refugees.
Yeah, refugees is certainly going to be the big humanitarian question going forward in the interim and in the immediate, because of the situation over there in Ukraine, where Russia has been able to make ground quite quickly from its initial onslaught that began about 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday evening here in the U.S., which was early Thursday morning local time in Ukraine, and especially as they're pushing toward the capital of Ukraine in Kiev. But in terms of those that are there, that are in Ukraine right now, being that we have such a strong Ukrainian population here, where they have friends, they have family, that have other people that are in their lives over in Ukraine, we hear so much about the Ukrainian perspective from the military side of things, dealing with the Russian invasion. For those individual everyday humans that aren't in the military but are living in Ukraine and are living in these cities that are being attacked, what has your committee and the Ukrainian community here in the Metro Detroit area and the state of Michigan heard from those on the front lines over there in Ukraine about just how treacherous the situation is in the homeland?
Well, look, it's no secret that the Russian military is not discriminate in what it shells and what it bombs. The initial sense of disbelief that this is happening has given way to anger and determination, or increased determination, since it was always there. Folks, I'm from Kiev, so people are spending a lot of their day in the subway, which is which is designed also as an air raid shelter. It's quite an expansive system, and a lot of people can fit down there. Air raid sirens are, can be easily heard. There has been direct bombing of Kiev. Actually, 2 cruise missiles and a plane attempted to strike targets somewhere in central Kiev. We're not sure where because Ukrainian anti-air defenses knocked them down. But you can imagine that for civilians living in such a situation, I mean, the goal is survival, right? Right now, it's collective survival. People are absolutely livid at what is going on. I think that there has been a lot of, from the Russian side, there's a lot of talk of our common cultural ancestry and whatever. I think that whatever grain of something remotely to truth was there before, it has certainly gone now. Nobody in any Eastern Ukrainian city, no matter how pro-Russian they were, is going to ever forget being bombed and shelled in the middle of the night. And it's simply a wanton act of aggression. And a lot of, when I say 1939, Ukrainians are very well versed in the history of the 20th century. Ukraine suffered about 8 million deaths during World War II. So it's when we say 1939, people know what that means.
We're joined by Eugene Bondarenko, U of M lecturer in Ukrainian and Slavic languages, as well as and literatures, as well as part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan, joining us on the Megacast. And so, in the committee's discussions with the community here in the state of Michigan, with our leadership in Michigan at the state level and at the federal level. And seeing the response and the initial response from the federal government yesterday, with President Biden announcing sweeping financial sanctions on the Russian government and those in power in Russia, not specifically Vladimir Putin's finances, which was a part of the criticism of those sanctions. In addition to those sanctions, is there anything else that's being discussed in terms of providing additional aid to those on the front lines in Ukraine trying to ward off this unprovoked attack from Vladimir Putin's cronies in Russia?
Yeah. So it's, first of all, let me say it is Vladimir Putin's cronies in Russia, and it's not necessarily the Russian people, right? Yes. But let's be clear that Putin has been in power for 20 years and has been quite popular. So I think there is a degree of culpability that Russia as a state bears, not just Putin and his administration. But in terms of what can be done, right? Look, the sanctions were and should have been to a rational, actor in Putin's place, should have been in deterrence enough. At this point, punitive sanctions are definitely the right way to go. I mean, it's incredibly important to make, first of all, the Russian elite, but also just the average Russian citizen feel the consequences of their country going way out of bounds of international law, right? I really urge us that we had no qualms cutting off trade with Germany after its invasion of Poland, right? We had no qualms about any of this, and I don't think we should either in this case. Furthermore, to help people on the front lines, look, sanctions are great, but they're clearly not enough at this point. And unfortunately, it is my professional opinion that we live in a moment where we are looking at where a big conflict is staring us in the face with Russia, right? And the longer it takes for us to look up and admit that reality, the worse the outcome may be. I really think that it's time that we use the U.S. Air Force cruise missiles and drones to take out Russian targets within Ukraine. I think that military action is the only thing that will stop Putin at this point. The Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight. And to me, if nothing is done, it would be as if in 1939, the world just sort of looked at Hitler invading Poland and said, oh, okay. Right? It's an uncomfortable thing to say, and I'm not hawkish. I've never advocated for war or invasion in my life. In fact, I've been rather happy to be able to do without for most of my life. I believe that this is one of those moments where push has come to shove, and we have to stand up.
We're speaking with Eugene Bondarenko, U of M lecturer in Ukrainian and Slavic languages and literature, as well as part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Team of Crisis Response Committee of Michigan, joining us on the Megacast. We see the images that are coming in from our national news outlets here in the United States, from national news outlets in other allied countries in NATO and surrounding Ukraine, and even from video from in Ukraine from soldiers and citizens through social media. And we see the extent of these attacks, the brutality of the attacks just thus far, as Russia is putting in their initial strategic attacks, while also, of course, having massive collateral damage in major cities all across Ukraine. We see that as very severe. We know that the support from neighboring nations, particularly from NATO nations immediately bordering Ukraine and bordering Russia, has not been as to your satisfaction. Certainly not to the satisfaction of those in Ukraine. But the Ukrainians are fighting back. The Ukrainians are willing to lay their lives on the line for their country, for their neighbors. That being said, the Russian military is one of the handful of most powerful militaries in the entire world. Are the Ukrainian people on the front lines confident, from what you have discussed with them, that they can ward this off long enough to have that international support before time runs out and the Russians overtake their nation, their country?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I want to, in 1941, Winston Churchill gave, I'm sorry, not in 1941, during the Blitz, Winston Churchill gave a speech in which he said, we will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the landing zones, we will fight in the streets, we will fight in the fields, right? I'm paraphrasing here. We'll never surrender. And that is the average Ukrainian fighter's outlook. Most people in Ukraine, you have to understand, there is no plan B. There is no backup country to go to. The sense is that if Russia comes in and they complete their military objectives, they will go about basically purging the Ukrainian cultural, political, and economic elite to basically put Ukraine into a position of an entirely dependent client state like Belarus to the north. So in this regard, Ukrainians really have appreciated what they've seen as the stark contrast between their country, where they have elections every 5 years to see if they've had, to give you the vibrance of Ukrainian elections. There's only been one 2-term president over the last over its entire existence. So the political climate is quite vibrant. Compare this to Belarus, which has had the strongman leader since 1994, when I was 6 years old, right? And Putin, who has been in power since 2000. Ukrainians see this, and Ukrainians see the kind of the lack of civic freedoms that increasingly is the case in Russia and Belarus. Versus the sorts of freedoms that they have been allowed to have, and they will fight tooth and nail and to the death. The question isn't can they hold out? The question is, how many more have to die before we do something?
We're joined by Eugene Bondarenko, U of M lecturer in Ukrainian and Slavic languages and literatures, and part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. And as we are looking on, Ukrainian Americans and other Americans as well are looking on in horror at the actions of the Russian government at this barbaric invasion of a sovereign nation in Ukraine, and seeing the damage that's being inflicted on the cities, the death toll that continues to increase by the hour amongst military in Ukraine and average everyday citizens in Ukraine as well. Much like with other tragedies where there is a mass amount of death, The immediate response tends to be a lot of we're thinking of you, our hearts are with you, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And like you said earlier, so many have already come to the right hand and the left hand side of the Ukrainian American community to offer their support at this time from your committee, from your friends and neighbors in the Ukrainian community, Ukrainian American community here in Michigan. What can we do as your neighbors, as your friends, as your colleagues, as strangers that just want to do whatever they can to help at this time, to help your committee push forward in the American response to what's going on in Ukraine?
Look, I think the important thing here for the average American is to understand the moment that we are living in, right? We do appreciate all of the support when people do say that they are praying for us, that they're thinking of us. Look, this does, of course, matter a great deal. I will not say anything to disparage that, and I'm touched by the number of people that have reached out to me. At the same time, I would urge them to add to this, writing to their elected representatives and saying that, look, we should send humanitarian assistance and we should continue to send military aid, but please send our planes and our missiles.
Eugene, please continue.
Because if there was ever a morally justified time to intervene and a morally necessary time to intervene, it is now.
We're joined by Eugene Bondarenko, U of M lecturer in Ukrainian and Slavic languages and literature on the Megacast. He's also part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. Eugene, just a few more minutes before we will need to say goodbye today. Anything else that you would like to say at this moment in time on the war that's being undertaken in Ukraine, on the American response, or anything else about Ukraine to the public here in Michigan?
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that Ukraine is a country that has played by the rules of the international community the whole time. Upon declaring independence, they immediately committed to getting rid of what was the world's third largest nuclear arsenal. They did so entirely in exchange for not a treaty guarantee, but a guarantee of the recognition of their borders, which have been violated, without any regard. Ukraine has consistently put itself through several successive administrations, has kept a westward course. It is in the Ukrainian constitution. It is inscribed in the Ukrainian constitution that Ukraine seeks to join the EU and NATO. They are a Western society. Ukrainians being bombed, right? If you think that this is a Ukraine-Russia thing, this is no different from France being bombed, from Germany being bombed, from any place in Europe. This is a European country. And as much as Vladimir Putin doesn't want to think it and doesn't want to admit it, he is currently at war with Europe, and he's at war with the democratic world. And it is imperative, and it is imperative that we help Ukraine by any means necessary. It would be a generational mistake not to.
Eugene, thank you very much for joining us and discussing a very complicated issue that's affecting not just those in Ukraine, but their friends, their family, and others in their life right here in Michigan. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the program. I thank you very much.
Absolutely, anytime. We're going to take a break here. You're watching and listening to the Michigan Megacast. Coming up next, we have more here on the Michigan Megacast. In just a few minutes, we'll be joined by Phil Gusmano. He is the vice president. He is an executive over at Better Made Snack Foods. And then we'll cap off the show at 11:40 today with Aisha Morrell Ferguson, the chief development officer of COTS, which is a Share Detroit-supported charity and nonprofit. That's coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was gonna die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried if, when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. You know, being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. It's scary. And if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you.
Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation.
Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
Well, if you've been to a social gathering, you've been to a barbecue, you've been to a cookout, you've been to a party here in Michigan, you've probably had a number of different snack foods. And one of the more common snack foods you'll find here in the state of Michigan are Better Made chips and other snack foods as well. We're joined now by Better Made Snack Foods Vice President of Purchasing, Phil Gusmano, on the Megacast. Phil, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So first off, can you give us a little bit of a backstory to Better Made Snack Foods? When did the business begin? What were kind of the origins of the business? And then what led to the name itself, Better Made?
So Better Made has been in business since 1930. They were started, right in the middle of the Depression. And at the time, there was 22 chip companies actually in the city of Detroit. So 22 different companies in one city, which is just amazing to me. But to differentiate themselves, they came up with the name Better Made. So they were better made than all the rest in the town. And it was true, because of those 22, Better Made is the only one that's left.
Yeah, and that's a good example of the longevity of this business and the way it's expanded over the years. Better Made, I mean, the product that I think a lot of people think about when they think about Better Made chips, they think about that yellow bag of just plain salted potato chips. But there's so many other products. It's Better Made snack foods. It's evolved into that over the years. What are some of the ways that the product line for Better Made and the way that Better Made approaches putting its product to market has changed over the years?
So we're always trying to be fresh and give our customers something new. One example of that is we've just come out with a popcorn, and it's called the Detroit Mix. And it's a mix of caramel and yellow cheddar popcorn. And it is salty and sweet, and it's one of those things that people really enjoy having. It's only been out for a couple of months, but it's really doing well for us.
And so you mentioned some of those newer products, the mixture of those flavors, but you've also dived into that quite a lot in the chip market as well, going from those plain potato chips in that iconic yellow Better Made bag to a variety of different flavors. When did the flavored chip effort for Better Made start? We know that other brands have been doing that for quite a while, but for Better Made, where did that start originally?
Sure. So for the longest time, it was just an original potato chip, and that was for years and years and years. In the 60s, they came out with the sour cream, so it was kind of like the dip is in the chip. So sour cream seasoning was the first. Shortly after that was the barbecue seasoning, and now we have 17 different seasonings, varieties of seasonings that we put on chips.
So where do those ideas generate from? Is there a dedicated team to them? Are you taking suggestions from the public? Is there some mixture of all of the above?
It can come from anywhere. We've had people call in and say, I think you should try this. We have employees that have said, hey, I think this would be a great flavor. We have some of the suppliers that supply us with our seasoning say, hey, this is out on the horizon. We see this as being a hot new flavor, or something that you might want to try out. And so we're willing to look at what people have to offer, and if we throw it at the wall and it sticks, it's great for us.
We're joined by Phil Gusmano, the Vice President of Purchasing at Better Made Snack Foods, joining us on the Megacast. And so going in and diving into those flavors, those different flavors that are being produced for chips in your company and for other products as well. A lot of those products, you got to kind of tinker with them, got to kind of trial and error with them in order to get that flavoring right. Just how much effort goes into perfecting each of these different flavors of chips before they go anywhere near market?
So we have a whole quality team that's responsible for research and development. We'll come up with a base flavor, we'll apply it to our chips, and then we go through a whole set of processes to validate, do people like them or not? And really, what it comes down to is a lot of taste testing. We do some internally, we do some externally. But for probably everyone that sticks, we probably have 5 or 6 that don't work. And so it is always interesting to see people's reactions to different flavors.
We're joined by Phil Gusmano, the Vice President of Purchasing at Better Made Snack Foods, joining us on the Megacast. And so it's a great tradition with Better Made of Michigan-based products. And of course, Better Made products here in Michigan are wildly popular. It's the reason it's been able to sustain itself as a business for so long in the chip market and in other snack markets as well. But how far outside of Michigan has this traditional brand then expanded, and just how popular is it even beyond the borders of the Great Lakes state?
So it's pretty interesting to see. We have a lot of people that used to live in Michigan that have moved all over the country and all over the world. And at one time, they used to really have a tough time getting their Better Made. But now, with the internet and Amazon and different ordering opportunities, they can get Better Made anywhere in the country at any given time. And it is really interesting to watch how our internet sales have really gone from a fledgling industry to really taking off. And, we've actually had to have people dedicated to packing internet orders for outgoing orders.
Much like other snack products that we see on the market, there's often kind of this special push to put this new, peculiar, different flavor, new peculiar, different snack itself on the market temporarily, or just to test it out, or even to put it out there with a special release and then have it be part of your permanent arsenal of products. Can you tell us a little bit about your Rainbow Old-Fashioned Dark Potato Chips? Our producer, Larry Nyland, brought that up to me, and I thought it was really interesting. What's the story behind that? When was it first created?
So the Rainbow Potato Chip that we sell is actually a potato that has a higher sugar content. And so when you fry them, the sugar caramelizes, much like when if you saute onions at your house or mushrooms, it turns a little bit brown, and it has a unique taste. It has almost a sweet taste to it. And when we originally started, that was actually considered a defect. And so we would go out and when we were manufacturing and pick them out of the production and set them aside. Well, people started requesting them. So we were able to put the pickouts that we did, we actually put in a box and packaged them up, and we sold them at the end of the day through our store. Demand kept growing for these, and we couldn't supply it. We actually worked with the potato industry and developed a variety of potato that actually gives us that opportunity to run that in a live run, and we were able to actually satisfy the needs of our customers.
And so what goes into the name of that chip? Because it's Rainbow Old-Fashioned Dark Potato Chips. You mentioned what that classification is for that particular chip. It's a higher sugar content, but why rainbow? What significance does that have in the naming?
So back they actually started doing this in the 50s, and really what they were trying to show is that it had a color to it, and so at the time the rainbow represent, you have colors in the rainbow, and it just helped to show that it was different from the original potato chips that we sold.
We're joined by Phil Gusmano, the Vice President of Purchasing at Better Made Snack Foods, joining us on the Megacast. Phil, any new special products that are also either being in planning right now that may be on the market soon and people should be looking out for, or have been recently released that are garnering some interest here in Michigan and beyond?
So we talked a little bit about the Detroit mix popcorn. It's a caramel cheddar mix. That is the newest one, but we also have a barbecue cheddar popcorn. And that's our barbecue seasoning that we have from our chips, and we've kind of mixed it together with our cheddar popcorn. And if you like popcorn or if you like barbecue chips, you can try this. It's a fantastic, fantastic flavor. It's one of my favorites. As far as chips go, we don't have anything really new on the horizon with everything going on with the pandemic and the supply chain issues. We're kind of sticking to our basics and really just making sure our customers get what they want and when they want it.
So, Phil, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the variety of different flavors in your chips and your other products that often you do get suggestions from those in the public, for people that are Better Made fans of different flavor combinations or flavors in general they would like to see in your products. If people want to make those suggestions, what's the best way they can go about providing those suggestions to Better Made health snack foods?
So if you go to our website, bettermade.com, there's an opportunity for feedback, and we take any kind of questions. You can submit your thoughts right there, and we'll get back to you on it.
We're joined by Phil Gusmano, the Vice President of Better Made Snack Foods, joining us on the Megacast. Phil, just another couple minutes with you. Anything else that would be interesting for us to know about Better Made at this time, or any other news or information we should be on the lookout for in the near future? Sure.
So I'll tell you a little bit. We get 90% of our potatoes actually come from the state of Michigan. And it is interesting, 1 out of every 4 bags of potato chips sold in the country, those potatoes came from Michigan. So Michigan is actually one of the greatest states for growing chipping potatoes in the country. There's more chipping potatoes grown in Michigan than anywhere else in the country, and we get the majority of our potatoes from Michigan. We're a local company, and we stay local. 70% of our employees live within the city of Detroit boundaries. We really try to work on keeping our money local. So when you're buying Better Made chips, those dollars are turning in our state and being reinvested directly into our state. So there is a big push for local purchase, and we fit into that area.
Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is the source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line, for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
To Sofia and Gabriel. Even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
72.7% of high school students get less than the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. This can cause pain, obesity, and can very negatively affect your mental health. When you have a consistent 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, you get sick less often, lose more weight, and have better relationships with those around you. For more information about the dangers of sleep deprivation, go to sleepfoundation.org. This message is brought to you by the WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about the Michigan Megacast by visiting our website, civiccentertv.com, and clicking on our Megacast link, where you'll find information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape Monday through Friday, as well as find all of our interviews and each full episode on demand at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Joining us now is Aisha Morrell Ferguson. She is the Chief Development Officer for COTS, joining us on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being with us. So first, tell us about COTS. Tell us the organization's mission and some of the ways that it benefits people in our community here in Michigan.
Absolutely. So COTS has been in the city of Detroit now for 40 years. We're excited. This is our 40th anniversary, and we're happy to celebrate just being in the community, part of the community, providing services to families and individuals that have experienced homelessness. Our mission is to create and to facilitate opportunities for families in poverty that would help them to thrive and to succeed in building stronger households, neighborhoods, and communities. We've provided emergency shelter, affordable housing, supportive housing to families for years. And we now also provide something by way of our theory of change, our framework, the Passport to Self-Sufficiency, which I'll have a chance to talk about, I'm sure, here in a bit. But on a day-to-day basis, we're providing housing and support to nearly 1,000 people daily, and 60% of them are children. Our programs are just very broad and provide support and assistance where those may have been challenged with addiction or disability or illness, and even just in general with trying to maintain and obtain affordable housing, which is a big issue here in Detroit.
So where did COTS begin? What's the history and the background of this organization from its onset? Because homelessness is not unique just to the city of Detroit. It's unique. It's something that's common in all major cities in the United States of America, and it's an issue that's tackled in different and by different means everywhere. So how did COTS begin in Detroit?
So COTS was started as a coalition. It was a group of organizations and individuals in the city that came together that realized that there was a problem with homeless men. It was an increasing problem with homeless men, and the problem being that there wasn't enough housing and support to help them overcome the challenge of homelessness. And so this coalition came together and ultimately created COTS, which was entitled the Coalition on Temporary Shelter. And that was back in 1982. Over the course of time, the organization became its own entity and stood on its own and was no longer part of that coalition. And so our name became a bit of a misnomer. And so we were kind of stepping away from that coalition on temporary shelter because for years, the focus was trying to find housing. So moving people from a place of homelessness into a place of housing. Well, that's still a Band-Aid to a much bigger, broader issue. Over the course of time, we saw an increase in homelessness among women and then homelessness among families. And so what started initially as what was seen as a problem among adult men quickly became a problem for a very broad and wide audience of people. And so we began shifting our services. So at some point we realized that there's a lot of service providers. COTS is not the only agency supporting those that have experienced homelessness in the city. And so there's a variety of amazing agencies that do this work and collaborate together to actually provide these solutions. But we noticed that there was a gap among family support. And so we reached out to our peers in the industry and said, look, if we shift our services to supporting families and really having an intentional focus on helping families that are challenged with homelessness, will you carry the load and carry the burden with among single men, single women, things of that nature? And they said absolutely, and they supported us 100%. So in 2015, our focus became on families, or really lasered in on families and helping families that have experienced homelessness.
And how much more critical has the need for these sort of services that COTS provides to these families been over the course of the pandemic, especially earlier on, where there was such a financial toll on the average family, and especially those that were struggling families that may not have been in jobs that were considered quote unquote essential, or jobs that were maintained by the businesses that they worked for. They may have experienced job loss. They may have experienced significant financial issues on top of what may have already been in place in their life, and that caused a major uptick in people either losing their homes or being up for potential eviction before those moratoriums came into place. So how much greater of a need did there become for these services during the pandemic, and how did COTS adjust to that need?
So COTS had to adjust just like a lot of people did. We've been using the word pivot so frequently. And what's funny, we have an internal joke. We don't like the word, but we've learned to pivot so well that it's just become part of our narrative day to day. But the families that we've collaborated with, one of the things that we saw was not necessarily at the onset of the pandemic, but is actually happening now. There was such an outpouring of support. Our community, and when I say community, I'm talking like a vast majority of people really rose to the occasion and poured out just an abundance of support. Our foundations shifted how they fund, how they, where they focus. Many of them kind of eliminated or either paused their general focus areas to really pour in support in COVID relief. And so there was a lot of relief that came into our agency and into many other agencies to really support families throughout the pandemic. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, the moratorium was a really, really big deal. The challenge is that now that that's expired, we're seeing a surge now that's impacting families even more so than the onset of the pandemic. We're seeing an astronomical rise in food costs. We're seeing astronomical rises in rent costs. In some spaces, in some cities, upwards of 20 to 30%, which is a really, really big deal. And so there is a great need still for support, for advocacy, and just for voices to share the concerns around this so that families can understand that they're not alone and that there are people, there are organizations, there are companies, there are community members, there are government entities that really are concerned about the well-being and the stability of families over a long-term period of time. But in general, and I can talk about our Passport to Self-Sufficiency framework, which I believe has really been a benefit to helping families to find balance amid the pandemic.
Yeah, let's talk about the Passport to Self-Sufficiency, because for those that are experiencing homelessness or have experienced homelessness and have been provided a service like the services that are provided by COTS or by other organizations, that's great. It gets them off the streets. Helps them get off the street. Helps them get off, get out of the shelter. It helps them into their own home. But then you have then you have the new situation, which is then you have to they need to work to prevent themselves from going back to that position. And so often what can happen is when those support systems are no longer there, giving them that constant support, it can be quite easy for circumstances around them, like you said, the rising cost of living, rising costs of food, to then draw them back into these situations. And that's why there is the passport to self-sufficiency. Can you tell us about that and kind of the pillars of that program to then help those that are being assisted out of their homelessness situation remain out of that homelessness situation?
Thank you. I sure will. So the passport to self-sufficiency came about because we had the realization that poverty was the driver to homelessness. And so as I mentioned, we had to stop and actually take a hard look at ourselves. What are we doing well and what are we doing not so well? We knew that housing was our sweet spot. We could really find housing, help establish, resources and work to try to find means for families to get housed or become housed. Keeping them there was the biggest challenge. Because when you transition into housing, the circumstances that the family has experienced don't always change. You just added an additional expense or an additional challenge to that, which is for their benefit, but trying to maintain it becomes difficult if they don't have the proper supports, as you mentioned. And so this theory of change really helped us to engage families to develop their economic self-sufficiency in a stabilized environment. And then the intention is not just to have an impact on the parent or the head of household, but to also have an impact on the children that would ultimately break that cycle of poverty for that generation and beyond. We call it the Passport to Self-Sufficiency, or PTS. And ultimately, it focuses on 5 different domains. And those domains are housing and family stability, economic mobility and empowerment, health and well-being, education and career development, and education and job training, and then employment and career development. And we see that as a wheel. So like you've got this wheel, and if those are the 5 spokes to the wheel, if any one of those 5 spokes is fractured, then the wheel is unstable. And it causes a challenge poses a risk that would possibly cause a bigger challenge or a bigger problem for the family down the road. And so through this Passport to Self-Sufficiency framework, we commit to partnering with families through both mobility coaching and mentorship. And so both of those things we feel are critical to helping families to not only understand the importance of setting goals, but then to actually working to achieve those goals, checking them off and celebrating each achievement, and then continuing to make new goals as they go along. And that's not something that happens overnight. In years past, there were a variety of different programs, such as transitional housing programs, and we even operated some of those types of programs. But they would be given in like a 12-month to 24-month time frame, and that's not enough time for people to really establish the habits and the patterns in goal setting that would help them in a long-term fashion. And so we've determined that the Passport to Self-Sufficiency really does require a long-term partnership. And so we commit to that partnership, and it's usually between 3 to 5 years. And the successes and the outcomes that we're seeing are just outstanding. Families are accomplishing goals as simple as maybe obtaining their vital records, their licenses, or other documents that they need to be able to obtain employment, as well as longer term or broader goals, such as an associate's degree, a high school diploma, associate's degree, or even going on to college.
We're joined by Aisha Morrell Ferguson, the Chief Development Officer of COTS, joining us on the Megacast. More information at cotsdetroit.org. And so on top of the website, I understand that you have multiple locations in the city where people can visit your organization if they're in need of these services or if they want to get involved. Where are these locations? And if people do want to get involved or are in need of these services, how can they go about participating?
So we do have emergency shelter, and that is over on Wyoming. It's near 6 Mile in Wyoming. That's where we are. And we also have affordable housing entities. We have a brand new apartment community that we've completed here in Midtown Detroit called Peterborough Arms. And we have another affordable community over on Wyoming called Bursmeyer Manor. The best way to learn about us is to give us a call. Visit us online for details about our programs and services, but give us a call. We can be reached at 313-831-3777. And we're happy to talk about how we can help, how we can support. And our services go beyond just, again, affordable housing and emergency shelter. If anybody needs support with coaching and mentorship, we're happy to provide those services over and above the housing as well. So by all means, we welcome calls.
Aisha, we got about another 90 seconds with you before we'll need to say goodbye. I want to give you an opportunity to also speak on volunteer efforts that are available or needed for your organization.
We always have a need for volunteerism. Now spring is coming up. We've got a lot of things that need to happen outdoors to just create an inviting and beautiful space at our shelter and our affordable housing communities. So we're going to be looking for volunteers here in the spring to help us with some outdoor projects. We always have opportunities internally to help us in administration. And then we have sometimes family engaging activities as well, such as readings to our kids during story time. So anybody that's interested in volunteer opportunities, by all means, visit us online for more information.
And Aisha, just another minute or so with you before we'll say goodbye. Anything else that would be important for our audience to know about your organization, or anything else we should be paying attention to from COTS going forward?
So I think that it's important for people to know that it really does take a village to build up community. You know, that there's the old proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to really build up community, and we do not do this work alone. Partnership is critical. So any support, whether it's through volunteerism or monetary donations, is appreciated. Any partnership with other organizations that are in this space, we're happy to collaborate with you. And we believe that together we create opportunities to succeed.
Aisha, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Aisha Morrell Ferguson, the Chief Development Officer with COTS Detroit. Learn more information by visiting the website cotsdetroit.org or by going to Share Detroit, where they are one of 280 nonprofits and charities supported by Share Detroit. ShareDetroit.org, and just go to their search, find nonprofits and charities link on their homepage and search for COTS, C-O-T-S, or visit cotsdetroit.org to learn more about this organization. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. Big thank you to everybody that joined us on this edition of the program. Of course, Aisha Morrell Ferguson, the Chief Development Officer at COTS. Phil Gusmano from Better Made Snack Foods for joining us as well. Big thank you for a very informative and insightful interview with Eugene Bondarenko, University of Michigan lecturer in Ukrainian, Slavic languages and literatures, and part of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee, for being with us at 11 o'clock today to kick off the Michigan Megacast. Big thank you as well for our Oakland County Hour guests, Michelle Bianco and Chuck Phillipson from the Walled Lake Consolidated School District's Foundation for Excellence. And of course, our first guest today was Gerard Baltrusaitis from JVS and Kadima. Their upcoming their webinar on Zoom, Your Brand in 2022, March 7th at 11 a.m. Big thank you to all of them. You can view all of those interviews as well as today's full episode mid to late afternoons, usually when they're posted, on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Go to civiccentertv.com, click on Megacast, and about midway down the page, we have links that will take you to your ability to watch full episodes and individual interviews on demand. You can also find links to every one of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets at civiccentertv.com/megacast as well. Keep up to date on everything that they're doing in the 22 hours of the day, Monday through Friday, that they're not with us on the Megacast, as well as over the weekends and their other original programming as well. Big thank you to our crew. Also, Calvin Brown, our technical director, with us in the studio every single day for our 2-hour marathon of a program. Jared Clark over at the office of My Michigan TV in Troy, Michigan, for helping all of our guests get on the show and get ready to be on the program with us, as well as Larry Nyland, the king of television himself, our producer, for booking this show every single day, booking this program every day, and helping us get ready to talk with our guests, and our guests getting ready to have an insightful discussion with me as well. Big thank you also to Maddie Mushkin out at Master Control for helping us both on and off the air every single day. Learn more information about COVID-19 from the CDC, the NBHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division, as well as stay up to date on the top stories affecting us here in Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast, and all throughout the state of Michigan at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Up next on My Michigan TV, it's Steve Leto Live, followed by Larry and Maddie Live, and we will return Monday morning at 10 a.m.